If you are thinking about buying an investment property in the Crested Butte or Gunnison area, there is one question that I get more than any other question, and that is, should I short-term rent or long-term rent as far as an investment property? And the honest answer is it really just depends. It's not just the property, but it's also which town you are buying in. Because short-term rentals versus long-term rentals in that equation, it looks completely different when you are comparing Crested Butte to Gunnison. So today I'm gonna break down both, what those numbers look like, what the headaches look like, and which strategy tends to work better where. And at the end, I'm gonna tell you which one I personally think I would choose if I were buying in this valley right now. I'm Heather Woodward with Living in Crested Butte, and I have been in this valley since 2003 and practicing real estate here for over 2 decades now. I help buyers every day from their first investment properties to full sets of portfolios, and in both markets, in Crested Butte and in Gunnison. So this conversation is one that I have a lot. So let's define the terms. What are we working with here? They're not the same. So short-term rentals, or STRs as sometimes people refer them to, think of that as an Airbnb or Vrbo. You're basically renting on a nightly or bi-week basis. It can be 2 weeks there, but it's usually less than 30 days. A long-term rental, or LTR, is a traditional lease, usually 6 to 12 months or longer, with a lease and predictable income. Could be the same property, very different strategies, and in this valley, very different outcomes depending on where you are. Crested Butte is legitimately a short-term rental market. Now, there are some long-term rentals here, but for the most part, it's a tourist-based economy. People travel here to vacation, they're skiing in the winter, they're hiking, biking, and looking at the wildflowers in the summer. And we do have a shoulder season that people love as well, and that would be fall and part of spring. So the demand is very real. You have a peak ski season and you have peak summer season, which produces very strong nightly rates. And well-managed properties, especially those with ski access or in a desirable location like downtown Crested Butte, can generate meaningful revenue. But there are things that you need to know before you buy. First of all, not all properties in Crested Butte are STR eligible. The town of Crested Butte has restrictions, and Mount Crested Butte also has some rules as well. You need to verify short-term rental licenses before you assume any property can be rented short-term. Second, there is an off-season. Late fall and early spring can be slower. So late fall is gonna be from Halloween to the beginning or mid-December. Early spring is gonna be when the lifts stop running up at Mount Crested Butte or the ski area up until the end of May or beginning of June, just depending on what Mother Nature throws at us as far as weather. Your annual revenue projections need to account for those months when occupancy really drops. Third, STRs require an active management. You have turnovers, you have maintenance, you have reviews, you have guest communication. So you're either doing it yourself or you're paying a management company, which they typically take in the range of 20 to 50% of the gross revenue. All right, so when it works really well, but it is not passive income, it is a business. All right, so 3, long-term rentals in Crested Butte. And I touched on this a minute ago. That is something that surprises a lot of people, that there is a long-term rental demand in Crested Butte. It is very strong and there's almost no supply. The workforce housing crisis in Crested Butte is very real. People who cook at restaurants, work on a mountain, and staff the shops, a lot of them can't afford to buy here, and so they need to rent. And there are not enough long-term rental options that meet that demand. So what that means for an investor is if you have a long-term rental in Crested Butte, you are very unlikely to have it sit vacant for long. The tenant pool is qualified, the demand is consistent, and you're not dealing with a turn and burn of a short-term rental guest. We can attest to this. Personally, my husband and I do have a long-term rental in downtown Crested Butte, and it is rarely vacant. All right, so the trade-off is that you are going to have much lower management costs and far more predictability than you will having a long-term rental versus a short-term rental. All right, so next up, short-term rentals in Gunnison. So Gunnison has a different vacation visitor profile than Crested Butte. So there's going to be short-term rental activity in Gunnison, but that is really going to be limited to very specific seasons. We're talking hunting season, university events, and for people who want access to the valley but want a lower nightly price point than Crested Butte accommodations. You're also going to get a lot of pull from the Blue Mesa, which brings in summer visitors, and some ice fishing in the wintertime. But Gunnison doesn't have that sustained tourism draw that Crested Butte has. So you're working with a thinner demand pool, lower nightly rates, and more variables in occupancy. So if your entire business model is built around STR revenue in Gunnison, you should really stress test those numbers carefully before you buy. All right, so long-term rentals in Gunnison. This is where Gunnison really shines as an investment. Long-term rental demand in Gunnison is very strong and is very consistent. You've got Western State Colorado University, students and faculty needing housing year-round. You've got hospital staff, county employees, and the growing number of people who work in Crested Butte who need more affordable housing options. The entry price for a Gunnison investment property is much lower than Crested Butte, which means your cash-on-cash return can actually pencil better on a long-term rental in Gunnison than a more expensive STR property in Crested Butte, depending on how you're running the numbers and management company factoring in as well. All right, the side-by-side comparison. So here's how I summarize it. Crested Butte STRs, higher revenue ceiling, higher management intensity, verify eligibility before you buy. That is very important. You're gonna have strong peak seasons with real off seasons. Crested Butte LTR, extremely light supply, very strong demand, predictable income, and lower management headaches. Gunnison STRs, you're gonna have a thinner demand pool, lower rates, and works better as a supplement than a primary strategy. Gunnison LDR, you're gonna have a lower buy-in, which means that your investment costs are gonna be much lower than it would be for Crested Butte. You're gonna have a very consistent demand from the university, the hospital, and workforce. And you're gonna have more solid cash flow without the vacancy risk. So here's my personal take that I promised you at the start. If I were buying a single investment property in this valley right now, I would want reliable income without the management complexity. I would seriously look at Gunnison for long-term rentals. You have a lower entry cost, you have genuine demand, and you're not riding that wave of tourism every season. Plus, you're helping with long-term housing and the shortage that is happening in the valley. If I wanted to maximize top-line revenue and I was willing to treat it like a business, I would seriously consider a short-term rental in Crested Butte once I've confirmed that licenses are available and it's in a high-demand location. And if I really wanted the best of both worlds, a Crested Butte long-term rental is where I would go. You're gonna have a strong demand, no vacancy headaches, less management, and you're sitting on an appreciating asset in a very supply-constrained market. I hope this gave you a clear picture of how short-term rentals versus long-term rentals work and the decisions that play out in this valley when you are weighing those options. Because there is no one-size-fits-all answer. And if you want to talk through those numbers on a specific property or figure out what is the best strategy for your situation, that's what I do every single day. So you can call, text, or email. We can even set up a Zoom appointment if you like. All of my contact information is in the description below. And if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that now. I put out new videos every week about the market, what it's really like to invest here, and most importantly, what it's like to live here. So I'll see you on the next one. Okay, so it looks like you're making a move to Crested Butte or Gunnison, Colorado, and you're trying to decide which video to watch. You could watch this one, or you could watch this one, or you could watch both, because they're both really going to help you out and they're both really good. But go ahead, just pick one.